Hello. Please hit like button and subscribe my channel. Also press bell icon for future video notifications. Thanks.
Can Switzerland, as planned, cut its CO2 emissions to zero by 2050? In a study, researchers at the Paul Scherrer Institute PSI have investigated what measures would be necessary to achieve this reduction and how much it might cost per person. In August 2019, the Swiss Federal Council decided on an ambitious target to limit climate change. From the year 2050 onward, Switzerland should, on balance, discharge no further greenhouse gas emissions. With this commitment, Switzerland meets the internationally agreed goal of limiting global warming to a maximum of 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industrial era. Now a study by the Paul Scherrer Institute, conducted within the joint activity Scenarios and Modeling of the 8 Swiss Competence Centres for Energy Research SCCER, probes what options for achieving this goal exist in the energy sector. The goal of achieving net zero CO2 emissions by 2050 requires drastic transformations in the provision and consumption of energy in nearly all areas, concludes Tom Kober, head of the PSI Energy Economics Group and one of the study's main authors. In their analyses, the researchers considered energy-related CO2 emissions as well as CO2 emissions from industrial processes. Today these emissions represent around 80% of the entire Swiss greenhouse gas inventory. Not included in the study's calculations are emissions from international aviation, agriculture, with the exception of emissions from fuel combustion, land use, changes in land use, and forestry, as well as waste, except for emissions from waste incineration. Also, emissions in other countries that are associated with consumption of goods in Switzerland were not a subject of the study. Electricity from photovoltaics must at least double every decade. The central conclusions of the study are, between now and 2050, the installed capacity of photovoltaic systems must at least double every decade. With 26 terawatt-hours of production envisioned in 2050, photovoltaic systems will be the second largest generation technology group behind hydropower, approximately 38 terawatt-hours in 2050. Furthermore, power plants with cogeneration of heat and power, as well as wind power plants, hydrogen fuel cells, and electricity imports, all contribute to meeting the demand for electricity. In the main scenario for achieving the net zero emissions target, overall electricity generation from power plants and storage facilities in Switzerland will increase by around 1/5 to 83 terawatt-hours in 2050. The study assumes that Swiss nuclear power plants will be decommissioned by 2045. The private car fleet would have to be largely based on electric motors by 2050, meaning that by 2030 every third new car registered would have to be fully electric. In addition, the use of heat pumps in service and living areas would have to be significantly accelerated, so that by 2050 they could cover almost 3/4 of the demand for heating and hot water. At the same time, it would be necessary to achieve significant energy savings through accelerated renovation of residential buildings. If Switzerland wants to achieve the net zero emissions target, a significant increase in electricity consumption must be expected. Thus in 2050, electricity consumption might be around 20 terawatt-hours above today's level. A fundamental driver of this growth is the use of electricity to power cars, buses, and trucks, either directly in battery electric vehicles or indirectly through hydrogen or so-called e-fuels, that is, synthetic fuels, which are produced by means of electricity from hydrogen and CO2. In the stationary sectors, the proliferation of installed heat pumps will increase consumption of electricity. If the necessary efficiency gains in heating and hot water supply are achieved, however, these could compensate for the increased electricity consumption. The study results show that stationary sectors could achieve an almost constant level of electricity consumption. Besides electrical energy, other forms of energy will play a role. For example, long-distance and freight transport as well as energy-intensive industry offer prospects for new hydrogen applications. Please support my channel to grow by pressing subscribe button and the bell icon. We will notify you technological news. Thank you.